You're listening to Behind the Shield, giving you 15 minutes of inspiration, triumphs, and more with the Salvation Army.
Hi, I'm Captain Ken Chapman. I'm the Area Commander of the Salvation Army in Orange and Osceola counties. And with our podcast today, we have a really exciting guest with a little bit of a different twist from what we normally talk about. With me is Monica Wanis, and she is a Senior Vice President with CBRE, a great broker here in the state of Florida. And usually we're not interviewing somebody at the level of Monica and what she is doing in the community. Monica, give us a little bit about what you're doing now, and then we're going to your background.
Sure. Good morning, Captain. Well, thank you for having me here today. So I'm a commercial real estate broker here in Central Florida, and I specialize in industrial real estate. So my job is to sell and lease big warehouse buildings. So I'm sure you're seeing a lot of the buildings around town popping up along the highways, those big boxes that Amazon and Walmart are going into. So typically I'm either on one side of those transactions. So I assist those tenants in finding locations. I also assist landlords in the disposition, selling those businesses or those buildings. And so that's what my focus is here in Central Florida. And since we're at the center of the state, it's ideal for that type of property.
And I think you have been very successful in your career.
I've had a good run, yes.
And today, I think, marks your 10th anniversary of working.
Correct. Yeah, 10 years that I've been at CBRE and 19 years in commercial real estate.
That's amazing. We are in great need of a warehouse and distribution center right now, and we have the generosity of someone who's letting us use one over on Shader Road for our Angel Tree distribution. And I'm hoping we can find a way to get that. Maybe you can work some magic for us.
I hope so. I hope so. I hope we can make it all work out.
Well, you have a great story about the Salvation Army's involvement in your life years and years ago and in your family's life. Would you give us that story?
Sure. So I'm first generation Cuban American here in Orlando, and my grandmother and mother came to the United States from Cuba back in the 1970s. She was a single mother that decided to make the decision of leaving everything she ever knew to provide a better life for her daughter. And she did that, and they came to the U.S., and it was a challenge, obviously not knowing the language, not having any money. It was definitely a hard start for them. But my grandmother was one of the toughest workers, and the grit that lady possessed was something very admirable. And so she worked 2 jobs most of her life here in the U.S. just to support her daughter and create a good foundation for them. And so, through the years, as, time went on, they actually ended up here in Central Florida in Orlando. And as my grandmother got older, she got plagued with a lot of health issues. And at some point, she was really, she was told she was disabled and unable to work anymore because of her health condition. So, at that point, she was elderly and needed, a place to live. But for that type of senior housing, it's extremely challenging to find, and it's unaffordable.
And then the Salvation Army here, I'm going to interject just a second, has housing for seniors in our William and Catherine Booth Towers, where 319 elderly live in those towers, all inclusively for the average of about $237 a month.
That's correct. And I don't know how, but my mother somehow learned of this program and was able to get my grandmother on the waiting list, which I believe
it's a 2-year waiting list right now.
Yes, there are a long waiting list, and even back then there was a waiting list, and we just felt like we won the lottery when she got that apartment. Because she's a very independent woman. She wouldn't have been happy living in our house with us. She wanted her own independence, and she was offered a beautiful life there at the William Booth Towers. And, my sister and I were still young, so we actually spent a lot of time there. So a lot of kind of my childhood, adolescent, I remember those memories there at the William Booth Towers.
Those towers now, I think, are 43 years old, and a lot of people are served, and I'm so glad to know that your grandmother and your family benefited from that incredible service.
Yeah, it makes me want to cry now thinking about what an amazing opportunity that was for her and my family. Thank you.
Well, a lot of times the elderly in our society, particularly those that struggle with health or financial issues, feel kind of tossed aside and moved aside. The way I look at it, I'm standing on their tall shoulders. The work they did to build this country, the work they did to build our better communities, we need to honor them in their older age. And so that's the purpose of the William and Catherine Booth Towers, is to let them know that there are places that people will take care of them, that they are cared for. We provide a lot of services in the William and Catherine Booth Towers.
It was amazing. It wasn't just housing. It was, you provided a community. You provided, the people that work there were all fabulous. You had programs that would take her on field trips or to the supermarket or Walmart. And these are things that they all looked forward to. And, a lot of them didn't even speak the same language, but somehow this community, they all came together and they all loved each other and looked after each other. And it was just such a beautiful kind of story seeing my grandmother live kind of the end of her life there.
There are actually 14 different languages that are spoken in those two towers, and sometimes it's a little challenging for the staff. We've learned how to use the phone in translation, but that's not always real accurate. It's really funny some of the things that it translates. But we provide emotional and spiritual care. We often give them food for those who are food insecure, and lots of other things, as you mentioned, bingo and games, and just letting them know they're not alone, that people do care. So Monica, I want to ask you, do you have any special memory that stands out in your mind being with your grandmother at the William Booth Towers?
So a special memory was actually when the demolition of the old Orlando Magic Amway Arena happened, and my grandmother's apartment actually faced the arena. So we got front and center, views of that demolition. We got there so early in the morning, and when the buildings were actually coming down, the whole area, that whole city block shook, and the building, William Booth Towers, felt like it was coming down too. So my grandmother in Spanish is saying prayers in her bedroom, hoping that her building doesn't come down too. But that was such a fun memory and a big historical part of Orlando, right, when that arena came down.
That's amazing. We've heard stories from some of the people who worked there for a long time and tenants who have been there. So how amazing to have a story like that.
Yeah, it was pretty neat, for sure.
And so your family, actually, with your grandmother finding that stabilization, your family obviously benefited from the services of the 100%. Salvation Army. So I'm talking to a successful senior vice president, a broker who's very successful. I'm sure you sell big money properties. Are you representing the one that we're in right now, Samantha?
I am.
Well, see, we got to work some magic, and I got some ideas.
Mm-hmm.
But you deal with big dollars,
right.
and you don't often associate people like you with the Salvation Army.
100%.
But there are so many lives throughout our community who have been touched by the work of the Salvation Army. That only happens because of great donors who continue to support us. A partnership with the city of Orlando and Orange County, and in Osceola with the Osceola County government and the city of Kissimmee. And then private foundations and philanthropists. It takes all of us to build a good community together. And I'm so glad to know that we were able to touch your family in some way. So do you think your future and your success now was somewhat affected by the Salvation Army?
Oh, of course, because, first of all, I had to be there with my grandmother because my parents were working also, right? So everybody's hardworking family. And so I spent a lot of time and there with my grandmother and cared for her when my parents were busy working and weren't able to, meet her needs at that time. And so it's just, I was able to spend time and really see what the organization provided my grandmother. So when I received that call from Bob, it just instantly touched my heart because, again, it's such a tremendous organization that did such great things for my family that I just felt compelled to try to assist you all as much as I could.
Well, only God would bring that back full circle. I remember a few weeks ago when I stepped foot in that building. Were you there?
I wasn't, no.
Okay.
No.
I stepped foot in that building, and it checks every box of
Right.
what we need. Now, we don't even have close to having the money it will take to get that facility. But I put my foot in that building, and something in my spirit said, this is going to be the Salvation Army Distribution Center. And so I claimed the first chapter of Joshua, where it says, every place you step your foot shall be yours. And I looked at the broker that was there that day, and I said, stop showing this because it's going to be ours. And there's a lot of discussions that have to take place on that. I'm sure you'll be involved in that. But
Correct.
It's so ironic to me and so beautiful how God just turns things around.
Yeah.
Your grandmother was helped by the Salvation Army, stabilized, was able to live a more peaceful and longer life because of the Salvation Army services. And here you are representing a facility that we hope will be the Salvation Army facility. God has a great sense of humor.
Right. And when Bob reached out, I was honest with him. Unfortunately, this type of opportunity is one that owners don't love to mess with because they find it as too much of a liability. It's just not going to end up being the result that typically they would want in a real estate transaction. So, we are so blessed that there are wonderful people in this world, and the owners of this property, the Sabah family with Ultimate Realty out of New York City, they were so welcoming of the opportunity to be able to provide for the Angel Tree program, the building. So we are truly blessed that there are wonderful people. And to be honest, there were several other of my clients that stepped up and said, we would like to help too. So it was really beautiful during this holiday season to see everyone's generosity.
When the community and nonprofits come together, we build a better community.
Absolutely.
And I'm very, very grateful to the owners of that building. And we're meeting with them actually on our distribution day. And
yes.
I'm going to tell them my vision, and who knows what God's working in the background and in the foreground. But we are excited, and we have a place to serve 5,000 children and 1,000 seniors on December the 14th to do that distribution. And so we're very, very grateful, and let them know that they are actually heroes in our community.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm so grateful that Monica has joined me today, and we look forward to a future with you.
Absolutely.
And thank God that the Salvation Army showed up. A man came to our door a few days ago and said, if I knew if I could just make it to the door of the Salvation Army, I'd be okay.
That's beautiful.
And your mother made it to the door of the Salvation Army, and she and generations to come was okay.
Yep.
Well, you are a trophy of grace and a success story, and we thank you for what you're doing in the community. Wish you the very best of luck and success, that God will anoint you and put blessings over your business. The mission of the Salvation Army is to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ through serving suffering humanity. We love inclusively, and we serve without discrimination. So to have the partnership with you and your firm and the owners of that building, we are so grateful. And we wish you and your family a very Merry Christmas.
Thank you so much.
So Salvation Army, you can check us out, SalvationArmyOrlando.org and SalvationArmyOsceola.org. Take that Red Kettle Challenge in the next few weeks. Turn those angels back in if you've adopted them, so we can distribute them on December 14th. And make sure that you are standing with the Salvation Army to make this a better community. God bless you, and Merry Christmas. SalvationArmyOrlando.org and SalvationArmyOsceola.org.
Behind the Shield is powered by News 6, United Way, City of Orlando and Orange County.